2 minutes each.
2 minutes each, yeah.
Thank you, Alas Count Corla. Pelletstown Educate Together National School is a rapidly growing national school in an area where literally hundreds of houses are being built, sold and occupied on a monthly basis. The school already has a demand for places for September 2019 of approximately 60 children, and that will see an urgent requirement for 2 additional prefab classrooms and some additional space for other school activities to be built on the temporary site that the school is currently occupying while it awaits a permanent building. The parents, the pupils, the teachers and staff of the school are all deeply concerned that nothing has happened to indicate the building of the 2 prefabs is receiving the type of urgent attention that is required now to ensure that children have classrooms to go to come next September. So I want to ask the Minister, why does there seem to be such a delay in submitting a planning application for these 2 prefabs, which are urgently required for next September? I want to ask the Minister to clarify if the planning application to Dublin City Council in respect of the prefab developments has now actually been submitted to the Council, and if agreement has been reached with the developers of this very large housing site for such a development on the temporary site that the school now occupies, pending the development, hopefully quite soon, the development and building of a permanent school site on the lands at Pelletstown. This is a neighbourhood in Ashtown beside the Grand Canal, very successful neighbourhood. There's an enormous expansion in the population going on, and the school was through a crisis in September 2017 when prefabs failed to materialise, resulting particularly in the senior and junior infants being bused to the Broombridge Educate Together school some miles away. And it was very difficult for the pupils, teachers and the parents.
Deputy Chambers is 2 minutes.
Orla, as Deputy Burton mentioned, Minister, Pelletstown Educate Together held a public meeting last night with over 100 parents and teachers held in the Royal Canal Community Centre. And the history of Pelletstown Educate Together doesn't vindicate good departmental policy in terms of forward planning for schools. They began their school in a bunker with no natural air, no natural light and no play space. That's what parents and children have told us, because of a site delay. In 2017, the school was split because of a delay by the department in securing temporary accommodation, where the school had to be split and children were bused to another school a few miles away at a cost of a couple of €100 per day for the school transport, a huge cost to the department. That was a split school, a split community at that stage. Now we have accommodation crisis facing the school for 2019. And then, as Deputy Burton mentioned, there's been a delay and an ambiguity from the responses from the forward planning section of the department. They have had positive news in terms of the securing a permanent school site, and that's ongoing. There's a planning application. But what their issue is for September 2019, a planning application hasn't been submitted. If we were to look back on the history of this, there was a significant delay in that, as I've said, in 2017. So what we don't need is more evasive language, more ambiguity. The feedback from the department is that they've told the school that it will be dealt with shortly. And you know from civil service speak, shortly can mean weeks to months, but that means delays and uncertainty for children who don't want to be split again, and a community spirit that is developing in the Ashtown and Pelletstown school community. So what I want to hear from you, Minister, is when is the application being submitted? Can you give an absolute guarantee that this will be progressed for September 2019? That's the feedback they need. That's the certainty they require, because the history of this school and of the development of it hasn't been good from a departmental perspective, and it's important we rectify those issues now and that you provide greater certainty than the answers heretofore.
Ministers, 4 minutes.
I thank Deputies Burton and Chambers for your question, and I'm answering this question on behalf of Minister McHugh, who can't be here today. I want to thank the deputies for raising the matter, and it gives me the opportunity to set out the position in relation to the interim accommodation needs of Pelletstown's Educate Together National School. The school is currently in interim accommodation at Ashtown Road, Rathburn, Dublin, 15 D15 W571, on privately owned site, and currently has sufficient accommodation. In September 2019, the school will require additional interim accommodation. Officials at my department are very well aware of the additional accommodation requirements of the school, and work is ongoing to ensure that there will be sufficient suitable accommodation available to the school for September 2019. My department has been seeking the landlord's permission to install 2 new prefabs, which will be required, as has been stated, in September 2019. The landlord has recently now given consent, and my department is currently working on the planning application, which will be lodged with Dublin City Council shortly. With regard to the permanent school building project for Pelletstown Educate Together National School, I am pleased to advise that my department has secured the permanent site for the school, and planning permission has now been lodged with Dublin City Council. Providing the planning process runs smoothly and no issues arise, the project is scheduled to be on site in Q2 of 2019. It is intended that construction will take place in a manner to allow for a phased handover of sufficient accommodation to meet the school's needs by the end of January 2020. Phase 2 of the project is expected to be ready for Q3 of 2020. My department is in regular contact and holds monthly meetings with the school's patron body in relation to this and a number of other projects under their remit, and will continue to keep the school's patron body fully informed of progress. While I have a little bit of time, why was there a delay in submitting the planning application? I think Deputy Burton had asked that question. The department was not in a position to submit a planning application until consent was received from the landowner. The necessary letter from that landowner has now been recently received by the department, and the department will be submitting a planning application for the additional accommodation required for September 2019 to the local authority shortly.
Deputy Burton has 1 minute.
I want to thank the Minister for his reply, which I want to acknowledge is a very positive reply. Minister, you are promising the parents, children and the staff of Pelletstown Educate Together that they will have their prefabs in September 2019. I welcome that, but I want to say we will keep you to that promise because this school has already been split up, and we want an absolute commitment that the school will not be split up again. I'm interested to hear that it seemed to take a lot of time for the developers who are advertising the wonderful schools in the area to sell the houses, that the developers seem to have been very slow in giving their consent to the prefabs actually going on the current temporary site. And can you confirm, Minister, that the whole of that site will now be usable, and it's a fairly large site, will be usable as required for the prefabs and for the essential purposes of the school? I hear that you're lodging the planning application shortly. Could shortly mean by the end of next week? Because it will take a couple of months to build the prefabs and a couple of months to satisfy the planning conditions, and we want it open in September. Thank you.
I welcome the comprehensive response from the Minister, but it's just interesting. There's a division of language. You've provided a lot of certainty around the timeline for the permanent school build, which we're aware of. You speak of Q2 2019, they'll be on site, and completion around Q3 2020. The most urgent need for this school now is what the primary issue we've both discussed in the topical issue, which is what's the definition of shortly? Because is that a week? Is it a month? Is it 5 months? and now it's within the department to provide that certainty. So it's good you as a government and you as Minister within the Department of Education are providing a guarantee now to parents, children and the broader community that the prefab will be on site. But the reason I reference the historic issue in this school and the difficulties they've had with the department is that promises weren't fulfilled, despite them being well-intentioned. So I'd like you to provide clarity around what shortly means for this school. Is it a guarantee that the prefabs will be on site in September 2019, and when will the application be lodged?
Ministers, 2 minutes.
And again, can I just reiterate that the difficulty was seeking permission from the landlord to install the 2 prefabs. That was the immediate problem that the department had. And as I said, that even the plan and application, we were not in a position, or they were not in a position to place the planning application until we had received written confirmation from the landlord, which has been received. And speaking to the department and speaking to the Minister this morning, now that that has been received, there will not be a delay on this. The Minister is aware of the difficulties that both Deputy Burton and yourself have brought to the Minister's attention. Just one quick regarding the site itself. The permanent site for the school, the site acquisition process is now complete, and it's for 1.57 acres site in Ashtown, and I believe that is sufficient to deal with what was being required. And again, can I just say that the department is regularly in contact, and they tell me this, and I've been told this morning, and I suppose you can have this confirmed yourself with the patron body of the school, that there are now agreements to have monthly meetings with the patron board. But also can I say that we will most certainly give updates to both of you regularly as to what is happening. Speaking to the department officials this morning, they tell me that there will not be a delay. Now that everything is in order, now that the landlord has given consent, that this will be done immediately.